Hi everyone, it's Jeff Smith. I'm a product manager here at Oracle for the Oracle database, and I'm going to explain how we bring Agentic AI experiences to our database using our new MCP server. If you have any questions about what we're going over, please drop me an email or feel free to leave a comment on the video and I'll respond as quickly as possible. So, big agenda. I'm going to try to cover this in as close to 30 minutes as I can. We're going to talk about what we mean, about an agentic experience, how MCP servers work with the Oracle database, some examples, what the example workflow looks like, how to install and config, a brief moment on security, because that's super important, and then I'll share some resources. By the way, this being a long video, if you look at the video description, I break it up into chapters, so you can jump straight to the scenarios if you want, or jump straight to the security section. All right, so before I get into anything, let's give an example. So if I'm using an agent and I'm working on a project to build a new application, I like to start with the data. So if I can build screens over existing data, that's good. And if it's over like real looking data, that's even better because it's just easier for me to spot flaws in the logic in my head that I've got going. So if I can tell my agent, hey, go into my database, you're going to find this table, you're going to populate it with this kind of data, and here's exactly how I want it to look. And I press my button, and all of a sudden now my retail system has 25, 30, 50 fake orders for my online Pokemon retail store. I've decided that I need to fund my retirement and get rid of my play toys. I can now do that. So instead of spending 20, 30, 40, 2 hours going through and setting up all of this, I can just ask the agent to do it for me and it sets it up in 2 minutes. So now it's live in the database. I can run queries against it. I can build REST APIs against it, and I can start doing my front screen mockup work. That's cool. So before MCP servers, the agents, the LLMs were really good at generating the code, but they didn't have an Oracle database to interact with to actually see what was in there, build stuff, create stuff, or populate tables with test data. Now they can. So when we talk about agentic, let's contrast that to like simpler ask type exchanges. So instead of asking, hey, what's the weather like tomorrow, which might get translated to a natural language to a SQL statement, for example, I can say, hey, agent, set up my alarm clock schedule for the next week so that I can sleep in as long as possible and still make it to my 6 a.m. gym class, but accommodate for the traffic patterns and the predicted weather for the next week as well. So that's going to be multi-step. That's going to require a good bit of back and forth. Much more interesting than the simple, one-off exchanges. And the reason we're concentrating on the bigger stuff is because that's where the larger amount of value, the bigger win could be for yourself, your team, or your organization. And also agents are just really good at this. So let's take advantage of what the agents are good at. Exploit them. Yes, let's exploit our digital assistants as much as possible. So the agent is sort of in charge of putting together the plans. It's what you're interacting with. They're going to employ a large language model to do things like generate code. That code could then be laid out for your application, or it could be code that's going to be executed via our MCP server, in this case, SQL and PL/SQL. So the MCP ecosystem has been widely adopted by almost all of the agents. And those agents are going to support lots and lots of different LLMs. The nice thing is we don't have to pick a winner. Like Oracle's not saying you should use this agent and you should use this LLM. We're saying regardless of the ones that you're using, they probably support our MCP server. So these are just examples of agents and examples of LLMs. And the responsibility of the MCP server is just to provide an interface to interact with the database. So my MCP server is not generating the SQL. The agent you're using is employing an LLM to generate SQL based on your request. And you're using my MCP server to execute that SQL against our database. So let's talk about some different things I might use my digital assistant for. I think the biggest category of tasks would be on the business side. So the Oracle database has tons and tons of strategic data for your organization. This data could be used for so much more than it's being used today. Oftentimes the bottleneck or the entry point barrier for interacting with the database is awareness and knowledge of the SQL query language and how tables and views work and data models. And people in the business, they know how the business works and they have an understanding of how the data is related, but they don't have a direct access to the database. But now you can. You could set up an agent in your organization that is set up to take requests from business users, and it translates those requests into queries that end up running, and that data gets processed. So you could say things like, hey, help me model a discount program for the next holiday shopping season, or help me optimize our shipping procedures based on the data that we have in our back-end system. Now that the agent has access to the data itself, it's got way more information that it can use to make suggestions and answer questions on. That's where the largest number of users in your organization generally lies anyway. But for development tasks, DevOps, DBA tasks, it's going to excel at the things those people are already doing. Think about in terms of like on the tech side, what's time consuming, what's boring, what's the sort of stuff that that you should be doing but you're not because you just don't have the time to do it. Those are the types of tasks we can sick our agents on. Like if I'm a developer, I can get help writing unit tests. I can help get documentation generated. If I'm a DBA, I can say, hey, help me find indexes that aren't being used that should be, or help me make sure that I'm getting optimal execution for a SQL statement. The LLMs can help generate the code to prove those scenarios out. So this is an example we got from a customer. Within a day of us shipping this product, they started playing with it, which is always cool, and they shared it back with us. They went on the business side and they said, hey, let's simulate a worldwide stoppage or interruption of the supply chain. Let's pretend another shipping container ship gets stuck in the Suez Canal for a month. What does that mean for our business operations after a month? So with a fairly simple prompt and with access to their e-business suite database via our MCP server, it was able to run a bunch of queries to see what it would mean for low-level stock items, things already being shipped out in current orders. And it categorized like, hey, here's where it's going to hurt the most based on expensive things and where we have low supply and where we have only a single source provider. And then it also provided like, hey, here are the findings and action items to work around this or to mitigate this. So just to get the data itself to answer the top half of this question was impressive, but the fact that the LLMs have been trained on business practices, they've read the same books and white papers that we've read in our MBA business level classes, it can combine that practical real world knowledge with the actual data from what's powering our business together. That's like where the real win is. And here are some theoretical examples I've whipped up. So I can say, hey, I'm a DBA, help me find the worst queries in my database and help me put together a plan to fix those. So with a fairly simple prompt and with generating a few simple queries that get executed on the database, that those results can be analyzed and reported back to me. So I asked for an executive summary, it gave me an executive summary. Here's the worst performing query in the system. Here's what it looks like compared to other queries. Here's how much money we think we can save if we fix it. And here's the immediate action items we can take to, execute and fix this issue. And it generated this for me in like just a few moments. That's pretty cool. Or from a data perspective, I track accident data in the town I live. It's from a nice, cool open data portal. I put that into my database. I can say, hey, let's find the worst traffic intersections over the last 5 years, overlay it on like a Google style map. And the agent, the LLM, is generating the spatial queries that I'm familiar with, but that I don't do on a regular basis. So instead of me taking the 20 minutes to reacquaint myself with those SQL functions in the database, I let it do that work. And then I can just verify that the intersections that are popping make sense to me because I live here. I'm like, yeah, that's right. And I can just concentrate on the results that pop out instead of working on the exact SQL constructs. Of course, I'm seeing that code as it's being generated, and I know enough to know when I see it that's the right approach. So again, it's just much faster for me to get my task done. From a development perspective, I can take up a new feature that we've released in the database and I have the agent execute it for me. So I can literally tell the agent, hey, there's a blog out here I want you to read. That's going to show you how to take one of these embedding models out of this S3 bucket, load it up into the database, and I can use that embedding model to vectorize data in my database. And then I can do similarity searches on text in my instance. So instead of doing exact matches or regular expression matches, I can do like contextual, like meaning type matches of data in my database. So brand new tech, model hasn't been trained on it yet, but I can tell it where I can find the information to do this stuff. It can process that, generate the code, run that code, and run the whole scenario for me. Again, huge time saver. Analysts are recognizing the value of this. I particularly like the far exceeding what's currently in the market. We've spent a lot of time making sure our MCP server could take advantage of everything the Oracle database can do in a safe, performant way. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is how we've done that and how you can take advantage of this. MCP makes this possible. Before I really get into the particulars of MCP, which is Model Context Protocol, if you've got an Oracle video, we have to introduce a new acronym, although there's a good chance you've heard of MCP before. This is not ours. This is an industry protocol. Anthropic introduced this idea basically a year ago, November of last year. And it's a universal connector. It's a way to connect agents to interact with other things. It's very lightly typed. It's very simple. So considering how simple it was to put together and how powerful it potentially is, so to allow an agent to interact with anything, the adoption rate for this has been unseen before. It's probably the fastest adopted protocol we've seen in the industry, or at least that I can manage. What it allows me to do is, in my agent toolkit, I can register one or more MCP servers, and everyone that I assign to my agent can now interact with one more thing. So if I'm a developer, I could set up an MCP server for my browser dev tools, and now all of a sudden my agent can help me debug my JavaScript apps that are running in my browser. If I give it access to my local file system, it's going to start helping me find files that I've worked on versus me having to, go through Bash and do all of my, Linux commands. If I give it access to my database, now it can interact with the content of my database itself. So it's a super powerful protocol. It's been embraced by pretty much every vendor, every technology space out there. They're very easy to build as well. So if you go out and look on just GitHub alone, there's something like 8,000 or 10,000 of these that have been published. The one that I'm talking about is one that we've officially given our customers. So this is not a project. It's not a beta. It's not a play toy. It's like an official sanctioned feature of the Oracle database now. These MCP servers deliver three types of things to clients, or primitives. The most interesting thing are tools. So a tool is sort of like an API or an endpoint. It's basically the function or the verbs that can be interacted with. So this is what we've largely concentrated on, and it's by far, like, when you see an agent has adopted MCP, what they really mean is they definitely support the tools. Although we can optionally supply prompts. So if there's a very popular prompt or a very powerful prompt you want to share with consumers of your MCP server, you can deploy those as well. And we can also provide resources, like this would be commonly like files you attach to a prompt. But we're generally going to talk about the tools. So our MCP server is Oracle SQLcl. It's an existing piece of technology we provide with the Oracle database. It's classically been the command line interface for the Oracle database, but it's now also an MCP server. So some of the benefits of that are it already works with all of the versions of the Oracle database, regardless of where they're running and regardless of how those databases are deployed. So it could be on my laptop, it could be in my data center, it could be in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, it could be at Oracle at GCP, it could be in a Kubernetes cluster, it could be in a Podman container. We just need network access to the database, and it's going to work. Yeah, super flexible, and it's a known piece of technology. A lot of our customers are already using SQLcl, and now they have the option to also run it as an MCP server. So SQLcl is the sort of modern replacement for SQL+. It does everything SQL+ does, plus a whole bunch of other things. So for example, these features could be used by an MCP server to help someone doing disaster recovery training or testing. You could ask your agent to do a failover and have it on the back end call data guard to take the standby instance and failover and make it the new primary. I guess that's not technically a failover, that's a switchover. But SQLcl has the ability to not just run query statements, but to do data pump exports, to send messages across our transactional event queues, to publish REST APIs, to implement application installs and upgrades via Liquidbase. So there's a whole lot of potential with having SQLcl as the base for our MCP server. It's not just about running SQL statements. So I was telling you the primary primitive for MCP servers are tools. These are the list of tools that SQLcl provides. You can't work with a database without being able to connect to the database. So SQLcl maintains a connection store. So that's just a list of databases with the user credentials to get into those databases. And we have a tool that says, give me the list of connections that I can work with. And then once you choose one of those, you can supply that as an argument to the connect tool. Once you're connected, if your LLM generates code it wants to run, it can now do that via the run SQL tool. And then once it's done, it could issue a request to the disconnect tool, which would end that session. The connection store, the agent never works with that directly. It's only making tool requests. It never actually sees the credentials being passed. So it's not guessing passwords. We don't have passwords stored in clear text files and .env files or even set up as environment variables. These are all stored and encrypted in our Oracle wallets. You'll see those as .sso files. So as a local MCP server, SQLcl is running on my machine next to my agent, just like I would have SQL Developer. Regardless of what the agent is, once you've configured the MCP server, it's going to be broadcast, hey, here's a list of tools you can use. And then based on the type of prompt that I've submitted, the agent's going to go, oh, hey, this tool would be really handy to help me execute this task as part of the plan I've put together to make Jeff's request happy. And then the MCP server is doing all of that work directly on the Oracle database itself. So the agent is working through the MCP server to interact with the Oracle database. And then the results come back through the MCP server back to the agent. So we're able to control what's allowed to go through and then what comes back as well. An example of what this looks like. So if you're a fan of Visual Studio Code and you're using our SQL Developer extension, we provide the MCP server there as well. So for example, if I'm using Copilot, I can go into Copilot and say, hey, tell me about my Oracle database. And it can actually try to do that now because it has access to this MCP server that allows it to connect up into the database to explore the database, either by using the Schema information tool or by generating queries to investigate the data dictionary and running those queries against the run SQL tool. And then that information all comes back and the agents do what the agents are best at, which is summarizing those results and presenting it back to the user so they can decide what they want to do next. Let's talk about the workflow because this is very important. As you're going to start presenting tasks or even just chat ask-based questions, when the agent decides that what it wants to do is use our MCP server, you're going to get a request for a tool. You're going to want to read that request and check it off and say, yeah, this is legit. You might be tempted for long tasks that take 27, 30, 40, 50 steps to just bulk accept all of those for the session. Don't do that. You want to accept each of these as you go. You want to remain engaged the whole time because, the LLMs are pretty good, but sometimes they're going to make decisions that we don't agree with, or they're going to put together code that's not good for the system, or not good for the task at hand. There's an easier way to do it. You're going to want to inject your expertise and say, no, that's the wrong path. Let's do it this way. If you're working with an agent that doesn't have this permission model, don't use that agent. I would not go full vibe mode in my database. There are disasters out there where other vendors have done this and bad things have happened. Let's learn from them and let's stay in the universe where we don't trust the agents and the LLMs. We remain engaged and we're hand approving literally every request they want to take. So I've had a question and it's saying, hey, what databases do I have to work with? I have a tool here that says, literally, give me a list of databases I have to work with. So it's asking for permission to run that. I say yes. It comes back with the results. We continue this agentic experience by what I want to do next. I'm going to say, okay, let's actually connect to this system. And then now tell me how many sessions are running. So the connect request is pretty straightforward. It's going to ask to connect to a specific database. I'll approve that. It's already decided what SQL it needs to run once it's connected. So once it's connected, I'm going to get another request to run that SQL, in this case, a query against our $V session dictionary view. I'm going to review this query, make sure it's safe. I'm going to click continue or approve, and then it's going to bring back the results. It's going to take those results and summarize them, and that's what I see below. Again, I'm staying involved throughout that whole process. Install and configuration. Okay, so our tools are pretty easy to install. SQLcl, if you're on a Mac, where we have a cask for that, you can simply do brew install SQLcl. You can curl this off our website. No login required, no license agreement required. And if you're in Visual Studio Code, you can go into the extension marketplace, search on Oracle, and pull down the SQL Developer extension, and you're good to go. Once the MCP server software is downloaded and extracted, we'll need to do two things. We'll need to configure the MCP server for your agent. And there's a universal JSON structure for doing that. There's a screenshot of what that looks like here in the client extension. You're basically giving a path to that binary. And in this case, we have to launch SQLcl with the MCP argument. And then we need to actually start creating these connections that can be used. So you can do that with the command line. So I could make a connect command and use the optional save flag, give it a name, and then it'll actually make the physical database connection and then save that. It's that saved profile of the connection that's used by the MCP server. Or if I'm using the GUI, in this case SQL Developer extension for VS Code, I can click through the connection screens and fill out all the parameters and then give them those names. So it's a shared connection stored between our command line and our GUI. And the MCP server just sees the names of these connections. So use good names, because in your scenarios, you're going to say something like, hey, connect to my payroll system. So if we can match up payroll to like any of these things on the right, like HR, it'll probably say, hey, it's probably this HR system. If it can't figure it out, it's going to say, hey, I'm not sure which one I should use. Can you just tell me? So the better names you use and the better prompts you use, the better experience you're going to have. Security. So we implement security at the database layer. We protect the data all the way down at like where the data is stored. So when you're using one of these connections, the user you're connecting as determines on what you can do via our MCP server. So if I'm just running reports, I want to create a user that only has the ability to look at the data I want to be included in those reports. If I'm a developer and I'm using this to build my entire developer environment, then my database developer roles and connections attached to that database are probably fine. If I'm in DevOps, I don't want to use the most highly powerful account ever, which was sysdba. I'm going to create like a junior DBA account that only gets to do certain tasks. And then that literally restricts what the agent's going to be able to do via our MCP server, because again, it's being restricted by the security layer in the database. So just follow all of the same best practices that you've already been doing for your human users. Now we're just, applying that to the digital users that are doing things on behalf of the humans. So least privilege principle, segregated environments, create copies of databases where the sensitive data has been stripped out, for example. Development environments that are just, copies of the metadata but no real data in them. Or maybe it's a data warehouse where it's read-only, or where users aren't able to use more than X% of resources to run queries. And then also, and most importantly, never trust, always verify. So don't vibe mode, don't full apply, don't full approve, Be engaged, use your domain experience and expertise to make sure the agents are doing what you want them to do. And feel free to reject. If they ask for something that's not good, I've hit reject all the time and say, no, 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 don't do it this way. Do it this way. As the agents are doing work in the database, we instrument that and make it as transparent as possible. So when you go into the dictionary views like $session, you'll see connections come in as SQLcl MCP, which tells you someone is doing things in the database via an agent. We instruct the LLMs when they generate SQL code to be executed on the Run SQL tool that they include as a comment in the SQL itself, the LLM they use to generate that SQL. And that also shows up in the database. And then finally, anything that the MCP server runs in the database via an MCP server tool, we log in a table. So I have a full accounting of all of my connects, all of my disconnects, and more importantly, all of my Run SQL requests. And for each of those Run SQL requests, I have the SQL statement or the script of SQL statements. In this case, I can literally see how the MCP server added my retail data sales. In this case, it was for my comic book collection, not for my Pokemons. The most frequently asked question I get is, hey, what can I use this stuff for? And so I've just been spending a lot of time on my blog, thatjeffsmith.com. Thanks if you're already a subscriber. Showing examples. So these are developer heavy examples. So if you go onto my site and click on where it says AI in the top corner, I've got a curated page there with this nicely laid out. And these are just some development examples. Hey, help me build a React web app. Help me fix my comments in my dictionary. Build me a brand new content management system. And by the way, I also want to use JSON duality views. Or hey, read my Spotify streaming data and build me a reporting app over top of that. So on my blog, you'll see each of those laid out with the prompts I used, with the data I used, and you can see the results that popped out at the end. One of the beauties of an Oracle database is all of that awesome data that's in it. But it can also be awesome or overwhelming to people, and that also applies to agents and LLMs. So if I have a mature system that's been used by multiple teams for multiple applications, it's pretty good chance that system's going to be varying levels of quality, I'll say. Maybe tables don't have the best names, maybe columns don't have the best names. There are acronyms all over the place. Some developers never believed in referential integrity, so there's no foreign key constraint, so it's hard to find relationships. There's all of the, hey, if you've worked here long enough, you know that this data looks like this and it's used like that, and this is what it means. All that information is locked up in a PowerPoint or a SharePoint site somewhere, or it's in someone's head. So here at Oracle, we've built a system where we can actually provide AI enrichment data to the agents and the LLMs. And what we've done is in our SQL developer application for a system, you can come in and start creating this enrichment data. So I can select one or more tables and assign it to like a feature area, or what we call a table group. So I can say this table group is for my online retail sales. So these 6 tables store that data. So I can annotate what the purpose of those tables are. And then for each particular table, I can provide additional annotations. And then I can also do that at column level as well. So this supplements what the dictionary already has in it. So, the dictionary has like our list of tables and their names and any comments you've added. Those are generally not uniformly done at a high level. So this is our chance to finally fix this. And so what happens is when I come in with my agent and I start asking questions, we provide a tool. And this tool says provide schema information. And this gives a marriage of that dictionary information that's already in there combined with our AI enrichment data. And it's always provided in a uniform way. That's the benefit of a tool. So if we didn't provide this tool, what's going to happen is your agent's going to start generating LLM via the LLM queries to go mine the database looking for stuff. It's going to ask for a list of table names. It's going to ask for a list of column names. It's going to ask for comments. If it can't find it, it's going to start streaming data out of tables looking for the data. If you are in that world, the way to fix that is a prompt that's this long, right? You're going to provide a prompt with a very detailed set of instructions, and you're going to have to do that every single time. And it's not going to be just you, it's going to be anyone that uses that database. What our AI enrichment program allows you to do is put that information in one central place in the database itself and deliver that information uniformly to the agents via our MCP tool. And we're very good about optimizing how that data is brought down to the agent, So the more compact we can make it, the fewer tokens that are going to be consumed, and the more you're going to be able to do from your scenarios, and maybe even the less, billing you're going to have to worry about from your LLM provider. The feedback and response has been overwhelmingly positive. I think everyone sees the potential here. I've talked to probably 3,000 customers about this in the last 6 months. That's not a hyperbole. When I'm talking about this, I get an equal amount of awe and fear. I want people to be a little bit scared. Before you implement this on your system, you want to have a good chat with your infrastructure folks, your DBAs, your security folks. You're going to want to build in the protection mechanisms to allow this type of tech into your database. But if you've already got business users using these databases, there's a good chance you already have the beginnings of that in place. If you need advice for helping set this up, reach out to Chris and I. Leave a comment on this video if you want with your email, and we'll set up a call and help you out with that. If you would like to share publicly what you found with this tech, we always love reading this stuff online. It's nice. It helps get the word out. And feel free to send your questions and feedback here as well, whether it's positive or negative. We want to hear. So the 3 main takeaways I have for you. We enable you to bring your agents and your LLMs to your Oracle database, regardless of the version of Oracle database, and regardless of where it's running, and regardless if it's the cheapest free version that we have and the most, powerful, awesome, more expensive version of the database that we have. It's an included feature of the database. We're not charging for this either. It's also supported. And most importantly, think big. These agents and LLMs are only getting more and more sophisticated. You're going to start with hello world examples, kind of like what I've been showing here. But I want you to have a plan to escalate that to the bigger, meatier, chunkier problems that your organization, your teams, your businesses are facing. Where are we losing or leaving money on the table? What processes could have not milliseconds shaved off, but hours? What parts of the code are you not super happy with, but you've just never had the staff to refactor and improve? That could have a big impact on the bottom line. Think at that level. And it's going to take some time to implement this stuff. So don't wait 6 weeks. Stop kicking the can down the road. Now's the time to start playing with this. And I'm going to give you what you need to start playing with it now. First of all, if you go to livelabs.com, by the way, all these links will be in the video description. If you go to LiveLabs and search on MCP, we're going to have a step-by-step tutorial on how to use this, and we're going to provide some sample prompts that you can use on one of our free databases to go play with this. So it'll be a safe space. You won't get in trouble for using it on your stuff. Step 2, you're going to need the MCP software probably, especially if you're already an existing Oracle customer. That can be done in 2 different ways. You can go to oracle.com/SQLcl, or again, you can search for the SQL Developer extension in the VS Code Marketplace. And then finally, freesql.com. So freesql.com is an online learning portal to teach yourself SQL based on an Oracle database. We host this, nothing for you to install, nothing for you to sign up for, no credit card required. You can go in there and anonymously browse our sample data and practice your SQL. Now, if you do have an Oracle single sign-on account, so if you've registered for an account at oracle.com, you would have used this to download a white paper, download a product, or maybe ask a question on the forums, or maybe even sign up to go to AI World in Las Vegas. You can use that email account to log into freesql.com, and now you get your own dedicated schema or user account in our database, and you get SQLnet connectivity. So with the click of a button, I'll show you the service name, the IP address, your username and password. You can use that to create connections in SQLcl or VS Code. And then you can hook up our MCP server to start teaching yourself SQL via your agent using all of our infrastructure. You'll just need to bring your own agent and your own LLM. Finally, we've got a blog on blogsoracle.com that sets all of this up for you or introduces the concepts to you. And of course, as being an official product, it comes with official documentation. So on the oracle.com/SQLcl page, there will be a link there to the MCP Server Docs. I do have another video that's like the webinar where we released and announced all of this stuff. I'll have the link to that as well. Thanks for sitting through this with me. Again, if you got questions, drop a comment, ping me on X or LinkedIn. Have fun with this. I think once you get an understanding of what this brings to you, I think that use case question, I think that just answers itself. You're going to have more use cases than you know what to do with at that point. So anyway, thanks for the time, and I'll see you soon.